The young human girl ran through the misty forest, her small feet pounding against the damp earth as her breath came in sharp gasps, her heart thrumming like a wild drum in her chest. She did not know why she was running, only that something unseen was calling to her, something strange and urgent that she could not ignore. The trees loomed overhead, their twisted branches like skeletal fingers reaching down to touch her as she passed. The fog swirled around her ankles, curling and twisting in shapes that made her shiver. She hugged her arms to her chest, trying to keep warm, but it was not the cold that bothered her. It was the feeling that she was being drawn somewhere, to a place she had never been before, yet somehow knew existed. She had been walking for hours or maybe minutes, it was hard to tell. The forest seemed to shift around her, paths appearing and disappearing in the mist, as though the forest itself was alive and watching her. The sound of leaves rustling echoed in the silence, and she thought she could hear whispers carried on the wind, soft murmurs that faded. Before she could catch the words, she glanced behind her for a moment, expecting to see a figure or a shadow, but the fog was empty, only the trees and the occasional flash of light bouncing off wet leaves and branches. She slowed for a breath and leaned against a gnarled tree trunk, feeling the rough bark under her palms. The smell of moss and damp soil filled her nose, and she felt a strange calm for a moment, as if the forest was breathing with her. Then a movement caught her eye, a glimmer of light flickering between the dense trunks like a tiny star dancing in the fog. It pulsed and shimmered, beckoning her closer. She hesitated for only a second, and then curiosity overcame fear and she stepped forward, her footfall careful but steady. The light seemed to shift away as if teasing her, and she quickened her pace. Her pulse quickened, her mind racing with possibilities, monsters or magic, perhaps something not of this world at all. She did not stop to wonder too long, for the glow continued to call her deeper into the trees, twisting vines and roots tugging at her clothes. As she navigated through the undergrowth, small animals scurried away at her approach. The air grew thicker, heavier, and more fragrant with each step, a strange sweet scent that was not entirely pleasant, yet not unpleasant enough to repel her. It filled her head with dizziness and dreams of places she had never seen or imagined. She thought she heard a faint cry, then another, and then silence, and it made her pause, her ears straining for the sound, her heart beating loud in the sudden quiet. She felt a presence she could not see, a shift in the air, like a living breath watching her, waiting for her to move, and she took a cautious step forward. The light flared brighter, as if in answer to her motion, and a thrill ran through her spine like electricity. She wanted to run and hide, and yet she could not turn back. The forest had claimed her attention and pulled her onward, and somewhere ahead she sensed that everything she had known and understood was about to change forever. The girl pushed forward, her legs aching and muscles trembling, as the glow in the distance grew brighter and more insistent. It danced between the twisted trunks, like a living thing urging her onward. She stumbled over roots and rocks, but refused to stop, each step carrying her closer to the unknown. Her senses were on fire, every sound, every shadow, every flicker of light setting her nerves alight. The fog wrapped around her like a cold embrace, and yet the glow seemed warm, comforting somehow, a strange beacon in the endless gray. The further she went, the clearer the shapes around her became, twisted plants with curling leaves that seemed to reach toward her, fingers of foliage brushing against her arms, as if testing her courage. She brushed them away, but the more she pushed, the closer the forest seemed to close in, like it wanted to keep her from reaching the light. The air shifted suddenly, thick with the scent of something metallic and sweet, like rain on iron, and it made her stomach turn. She swallowed hard and pressed forward. The glow pulsed in a rhythm almost like a heartbeat, and she realized with a shock that she felt the rhythm in her own chest, her fingers brushing against bark, rough and wet, her feet sinking slightly into the mossy earth. She felt the weight of the forest pressing around her, yet the light drew her like a magnet, her curiosity overpowering every instinct to flee. She paused for a moment on a small rise, looking down into a clearing. She could barely believe her eyes. A soft pool of light lay in the center, and there she saw it, a small creature huddled on the ground, unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was thin, almost skeletal, its skin a pale translucent color, and its eyes large and shimmering like liquid stars. It was crying, tiny crystalline tears that fell from its eyes and struck the ground with a faint tinkling sound that echoed strangely in the clearing. The girl swallowed hard, her mouth dry. She wanted to look away, but her feet were rooted to the spot, a strange mixture of fear and awe holding her there. She crouched slowly, her hands trembling. She could see the creature shivering, its limbs frail and weak. It made a faint sound, a whimper, almost like a plea, and her heart clenched with empathy. She had never felt such sorrow from a being she did not even understand. The tears it shed reflected the dim light, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the forest floor, and she realized she had never seen anything so beautiful and so sad at the same time. The creature looked up and their eyes met, and in that instant the world seemed to hold its breath. She felt a connection that she could not explain, a silent communication passing between them, a message of need and trust that transcended language. She stepped closer, her hand extended slowly. The creature flinched but did not retreat, and the girl felt a thrill of hope mixed with fear. Something magical and dangerous was unfolding, and she knew that nothing in her life would ever be the same. After this moment the forest held its breath, and the glow from the clearing seemed to pulse brighter, as if acknowledging her presence. The girl inched forward, her heart hammering in her chest, each step a mixture of fear and wonder, her eyes never leaving the alien that huddled on the damp forest floor, its crystalline tears glinting in the soft light like fallen stars. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, as if the world itself had paused to witness this encounter. She knelt, slowly keeping her hands open and low to show she meant no harm. The creature watched her warily, its large eyes shimmering with a mixture of pain and curiosity. It made a faint sound, almost like a whisper, and she tilted her head, listening intently, trying to understand if it was calling to her or simply expressing its sorrow. She reached out a hand, trembling her fingers, brushing the moss and roots between her and the alien. The moment felt endless, and the forest around them seemed to grow quieter, the rustling of leaves and distant bird calls fading into silence, as if giving them space to connect. The alien shivered violently, a small whimper escaping its lips, and the girl felt a surge of empathy, a deep aching in her chest that made her want to cry too. She realized that this being was not only lost, but starving, weak and vulnerable, its body frail from hunger, and its spirit heavy with suffering. She looked around desperately, searching the forest floor for anything she could offer, something to help sustain it. Her eyes fell on a cluster of berries, glistening with dew, and some fallen mushrooms that seemed edible. She gathered them carefully, her hands shaking as she approached the creature, slowly placing the food a short distance away. The alien sniffed the offerings and tilted its head curiously, its eyes wide and cautious. She stayed low, waiting, silently giving it time to trust her. The crystal tears continued to glint, but slowed slightly, as if it recognized her intentions. It reached forward, tentatively picking at the berries with delicate fingers. The girl watched in awe, a wave of relief and joy washing over her. For the first time, the creature looked less like a being on the brink of collapse, and more like a living, breathing presence that could survive if given a chance. She spoke softly to it, her voice trembling, but gentle words spilling out even though she knew it could not understand. She hoped the tone conveyed kindness and care. The alien paused between bites, its eyes meeting hers again, and she felt a strange warmth, a silent acknowledgement that it understood she was there to help, a bond forming in that shared silence. The mist around them seemed to part slightly, revealing faint rays of light that highlighted the alien's translucent skin and the tiny crystals still clinging to its cheeks. It was a magical sight, ethereal and fragile, as if the forest itself was blessing this moment. The girl leaned back slightly to give it space, her heart racing and her mind swirling with thoughts. She realized she had stumbled into something extraordinary, something beyond any story she had ever heard. The alien paused in its eating, looking at her with a gaze so penetrating it made her shiver in wonder, and she knew instinctively that this encounter would change her forever, that this small, fragile creature had found a guardian, and that she had found a purpose she could not yet name. The alien slowly finished the berries and mushrooms, its small hands trembling slightly as it ingested the food. The girl watched, carefully, ready to offer more if needed, a sense of cautious hope swelling in her chest. She could see its body responding to nourishment, a subtle strength returning to its limbs. The fragile shivering began to lessen, and its breathing became steadier. She felt a strange thrill witnessing this revival, a silent triumph shared between them. The mist around them seemed to shimmer with a new intensity, the air thick with magic and possibility. She took a deep breath. The forest no longer felt threatening, it felt alive with energy, like it was celebrating the small victory of life. The alien blinked up at her, its large eyes no longer clouded with pain but glimmering with a faint luminescent glow. A soft hum seemed to emanate from its body, a vibration that resonated through the ground beneath them. She reached out again, this time a little closer, her fingers brushing its tiny arm gently. The creature flinched at first but then relaxed, as if learning to trust her touch. The crystal tears had stopped for now, but small flecks clung to its cheeks, catching the light like tiny fragments of starlight. The girl could not help but marvel at the beauty of the sight. It was heartbreaking and mesmerizing. All at once she whispered words of comfort even though she doubted it could understand. She hoped the tone alone conveyed safety and care. The alien tilted its head curiously and let out a soft sound, almost melodic, like a sigh of relief, and in that instant she felt a connection deep and inexplicable, a bond forming that transcended words. The forest seemed to lean in closer around them, the leaves shimmering faintly, the fog curling away like a protective veil. The girl realized she was witnessing something extraordinary, not just a moment of survival, but the beginning of something miraculous. She offered more berries, carefully placing them within reach, and the alien reached forward delicately this time, with a steady confidence that made her heart leap. She could see its strength returning in the way it held itself, in the way its glowing eyes sparkled with new life. The light around them grew brighter, the shadows retreating slowly, as if the forest itself wanted to reveal the clearing fully now. The air vibrated with energy, a low hum like a heartbeat echoing from the ground, and the trees, the girl felt it in her bones, a sense of anticipation tingling through her every nerve. She knew something was coming, something larger than either of them. The alien paused mid-bite, its gaze fixed on her, and she felt the intensity of its attention like an unspoken communication, filling the space between them. And then the ground beneath them seemed to shift subtly, a pulse of light radiating outward. The crystal flecks on the alien's face caught the light and multiplied, shimmering in a mesmerizing pattern. The girl stepped back instinctively, her pulse racing, fear, excitement, and wonder mingling in her chest. She realized she was not just a witness anymore, she was part of the story unfolding, a story of life, resilience, and magic that would change everything she had ever known. The alien's body began to emit a soft glow, stronger now with each breath, as if preparing for something beyond understanding, and the girl felt her heartbeat matched the rhythm of the forest. The anticipation was unbearable, and she knew that whatever came next would astonish her beyond anything she had imagined. The girl stared at the strange creature before her, and her chest felt heavy, as though her heart itself had turned into stone. She could see the faint outline of its ribcage pressing against its thin silver skin. Every shallow breath made its body shudder, the sound like broken glass grinding in the silence of the forest. The enormous eyes blinked slowly, glowing with faint light that looked like dying embers in a fire. She noticed the strange crystals at its feet, each one sharp and luminous, each one shaped by the tears that dripped from the alien face. Yet those crystals gave no comfort to the creature. Its body bent forward, its hands pressed against the earth as though trying to claw at the soil, in search of something unseen. The girl realized then, with sudden clarity, that this being was starving, not starving as a human starves with hunger that can be silenced with bread or water, but starving as though the very energy of its body had drained away, as though it was fighting to remain in existence. She saw its lips part slightly, no words, leaving only the faintest rasp and a deep low rumble from its hollow frame, like a drum echoing from within. She understood that sound, for it was the sound of emptiness. The alien lifted one trembling hand and reached for one of the crystals, but the hand dropped back down. The crystal rolled away, and she could almost hear the whisper of despair in the gesture, as if the creature itself knew the crystals were useless. Not food, not strength, not life, merely remnants of sorrow turned solid. The girl stepped back, fear mixing with pity. She was only a child, alone in the dark woods, yet something inside her, stronger than caution, stronger than survival, whispered that she could not just stand and watch a life fade away before her eyes. The creature turned its head toward her, gaze locking onto hers, and in that moment she felt her breath catch. It was not rage nor threat in those eyes, but a plea unspoken. The wind shifted around them, leaves rustling, as if the forest itself was watching and waiting. She reached down into her satchel, her hands trembling, her stomach aching, for she too had not eaten since morning. She felt the rough cloth of her last piece of bread wrapped tight to protect it from the damp. She held it close to her chest for a moment, the voice of reason screaming to save it for herself if she wished to see her village again. Yet the sight before her, the frail body, the fading light, the silent tears that fell in crystal form, crushed that voice. She stepped forward, her small hand outstretched, and placed the bread before the alien. The creature stared at it with confusion, as though it had never seen such a thing. Then slowly, very slowly, it lifted the food, its fingers shaking as though the weight of that small scrap was almost too much. It brought the bread to its mouth and took a single careful bite. The girl waited, heart pounding, as the alien chewed the morsel with the reverence of a starving soul tasting life itself. For the first time in eternity, she saw the faintest shimmer return to its eyes, the trembling of its frame quieted slightly. The forest around them seemed to exhale, and the girl knew the moment she had crossed the line. Between fear and compassion there was no turning back. The bread disappeared slowly, bite after bite, as though each fragment carried a weight heavier than stone. The girl stood, silent, her hands trembling by her sides, her body torn between relief and fear, her stomach clenched, for she had surrendered the last of her food, yet her eyes could not leave the alien creature in front of her, its movements fragile but steadier than before, its glow flickering faintly like a lantern on the edge of burning out. The alien lowered the final crumb into its mouth, and for a moment it sat perfectly still, as if listening to the sound of its own heartbeat. It looked at its hands, palms turned upward, the thin silver skin now faintly pulsing with life that had not been there before. The girl realized she had offered not simply bread but a choice between watching death and giving hope, and she had chosen hope even if it cost her. The creature lifted its enormous eyes toward her, and in them she saw something more than hunger, more than weakness. It was gratitude, deep and quiet, an emotion that bridged the impossible gap between human and alien. She felt her breath shake in her chest, for this was not a monster, not a nightmare from the stars, but a being as fragile as she was. The forest whispered. Around them, branches groaning in the night, leaves brushing like voices too faint to understand. The girl shivered, not from cold, but from the enormity of what she had done. She wondered if the bread would be enough, if the creature would survive, or if her gift was only a delay of the inevitable. Yet she also knew she could not take it back. The choice had already bound them together. The alien placed one hand over its chest, and a faint hum resonated from its body, the sound gentle like the strings of an unseen instrument. The glow spread across its skin and reflected in the crystals at its feet, turning them into shards of rainbow light. The girl gasped softly, unable to look away, her fear melting into awe. She remembered her village, the faces of those who had warned her never to wander so far, the strict voices that told stories of shadows and dangers beyond the fields. Yet here she stood, feeding a creature of another world, her heart racing at the thought of what the villagers would do if they saw her now. Would they strike it down? Would they run? Would they even believe her? The alien leaned forward, its eyes still fixed on hers, and raised one finger pointing at the earth between them. Its touch pressed lightly into the soil, etching faint glowing lines as though trying to draw or speak without words. The girl crouched closer, fascinated, her fear replaced by curiosity. Each line shimmered, then faded, but the meaning eluded her. She wondered if it was a language, a plea, a story. She whispered without sound, her lips forming words that carried no voice, hoping somehow it would understand. She pointed to her own chest, then to the breadcrumbs on the ground, then to the creature itself. The alien blinked once, twice, and then lowered its head in a gesture she recognized as thanks. Her heart surged, warmth rising inside her. Despite her hunger, despite her fear, she realized she had made a choice that no one in her village would have dared to make. She had chosen compassion over survival, and in that choice, she sensed a path unfolding, one that would not end with her simply returning home. The night grew deeper, the forest darker, yet between them there was a glow, a fragile light, born of trust and of a bond no human story had ever spoken of before. The alien sat in silence, its body still weak yet no longer on the edge of collapse. Its eyes glimmered faintly like pools of starlight, and the girl could feel a change in the air around them. The forest no longer seemed menacing, the wind no longer cut like a blade. Instead, there was a quiet hum that wrapped around her like a hidden song. The creature's glow pulsed steadily brighter with every moment, and she realized that her gift had sparked something she did not fully understand. She remained crouched, her small hands pressed into the damp soil, her gaze fixed on the being before her. The crystals that had fallen from its tears reflected the light in fractured colors, scattering the clearing with sharp fragments of beauty. She felt drawn to them, but she did not reach out. They seemed sacred, the remnants of pain and sorrow made solid, and she feared breaking them would break something within the creature itself. The alien lifted its hand slowly, the gesture uncertain, as though asking permission. Its long fingers trembled in the air, then extended toward her. She hesitated, her instincts warned her of danger, yet her heart urged her forward. She extended her hand, small and fragile compared to its own, and for the briefest second, their fingertips brushed. A jolt ran through her, not of pain but of warmth, a sensation like stepping into sunlight after days of rain. It surged through her veins, and she gasped, unable to pull away. The creature's eyes widened and it seemed equally startled by the contact. It lowered its hand, but the glow in its body grew steadier, brighter, as though her touch had anchored it to life itself. The girl exhaled slowly, her fear thinning, replaced by awe. She realized then that she was no longer staring at a stranger from the stars. She was standing beside a soul that needed her just as she needed it. Loneliness had brought them both to this moment. She lost in the forest, it lost in its suffering, both finding a fragile connection in the darkest of places. The forest responded in subtle ways. The wind softened, the shadows seemed to retreat, the night itself seemed to pause, as though watching something rare and sacred unfold. She could hear the faint drip of water in the distance, the rustle of unseen creatures, yet none dared to intrude. The bond forming between human and alien felt untouchable. She wondered if this was how trust was, built not in grand gestures, but in small moments, in the sharing of food, in the offering of a hand, in the quiet acceptance of each other's presence. She felt the weight of the world lighten, as if for the first time she was not truly alone. She smiled faintly, her hunger and fear forgotten, at least for now. The alien tilted its head as if studying her, then placed its palm gently over its chest. The glow beneath its skin flared warmly, and it bowed its head in a gesture unmistakable gratitude, pure and silent. She placed her own hand against her chest, mirroring the action, and for the first time since losing her way, she felt safe above them. The stars shone brighter, the clearing bathed in silver light, as though the heavens themselves approved of the fragile bond that had been born in that hidden corner of the forest. The clearing grew still, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The girl felt the weight of silence press against her ears, only broken by the soft hum that radiated from the alien body. The glow beneath its skin pulsed faster and brighter, each beat like the rhythm of a hidden drum. The crystals scattered across the ground trembled faintly, as though resonating with the creature's rising energy. She stepped back instinctively, her heart pounding, uncertain if this was wonder or danger unfolding before her. The alien lifted its head, its eyes wide with light, no longer weak, no longer dim, instead fierce and endless, as though the night sky itself had been poured into them. Its chest rose and fell with a strength she had not seen before. Then, without warning, a surge rippled through its body, a flash that made the girl shield her eyes. The ground beneath her shook violently, and she nearly fell to her knees. The air vibrated with power, a hum that grew louder until it filled every corner of the clearing. The trees bent as if caught in a storm, though no wind stirred. The girl clutched at the roots nearby, struggling to keep herself steady. She gasped as the alien rose from the ground, not by muscle or motion but by light. Its body lifted, weightless, suspended in the center of the clearing, radiant lines of energy coursing through its frame. The glow burst outward, a wave that struck the soil and shook the forest. Animals cried out in the distance, their voices drowned by the brilliance that pierced the night. The crystals on the ground ignited into shards of color, spinning upward in spirals. They whirled around the alien like fragments of a shattered rainbow, and then dissolved into sparks that vanished in the air. The girl watched in awe, her fear melted away by the sheer beauty of the sight. It was as if the alien had awakened from a deep, endless slumber, reborn in the moment she had offered it life. The bread had been fuel, but the connection between them had been the true spark, and now she was witnessing something no human eyes had ever seen. The alien raised its arms, the light swelling until it broke free in a single eruption. A beam of pure radiance tore through the clouds above, slicing the sky open with blinding brilliance. The heavens flared, the stars hidden behind the night revealed themselves brighter than before. The beam stretched endlessly upward, as though calling to something far beyond human reach. The girl shielded her eyes, yet she could not look away. She felt her chest tighten, not with fear but with awe, her soul trembling with the knowledge that she was part of something far greater than herself. The forest, once dark and hostile, now glowed like a sacred place, each leaf and branch painted in silver light. She knew this was not the end, but the beginning of a story that would change everything. The alien slowly lowered its arms, its body descending again, the glow softer now yet steady. Its gaze found hers across the clearing, and for the first time she saw not weakness, not hunger, not despair, but strength, the kind of strength that carried the weight of the stars themselves. And she realized that what she had awakened would not remain hidden much longer. The beam of light that tore through the sky did not fade quickly. It lingered like a pillar connecting the earth to the heavens, a silent trumpet blast that called out to every soul within miles. The girl stood frozen, her small body dwarfed by the brilliance, her breath shallow, her eyes wide, her heart pounding with the knowledge that this moment would never be forgotten. From the edge of the forest came voices, faint at first, then louder cries of alarm, shouts of wonder, footsteps rushing through the undergrowth. Villagers, drawn by the impossible sight, they burst into the clearing, their torches and lanterns useless against the blinding glow. They gasped as one, their bodies halting, their faces twisted in awe and fear when their eyes landed upon the girl and the alien standing side by side. The alien, no longer frail, no longer trembling, radiated calm power, its chest glowing with steady light crystals, still shimmering at its feet. It turned slowly toward the crowd, its gaze vast and unblinking, like the sky itself, yet there was no malice in its eyes, only stillness and strength. The villagers recoiled, some raising their tools as weapons, others clutching one another, whispering prayers and curses. The girl felt their fear wrap around her. Like a storm she stepped forward, her small figure illuminated her shadow long behind her. She raised her arms, not to command but to show she was unafraid. She wanted them to see what she had seen, that the creature was not a monster but a soul that had suffered and survived. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Instead, the silence stretched heavy, filled only by the faint hum of the alien body. The villagers murmured, their voices clashing. One called for fire, another for retreat, another cried that it was a sign from the gods. None dared to step closer, yet none could look away. The alien lifted its hand slowly, deliberately, and pressed it over its chest. The glow intensified, a gesture that seemed both powerful and humble, and then it lowered its head in quiet acknowledgement. The girl mirrored the gesture, her hand pressed over her chest, her head bowed, and in that instant a hush fell over the clearing, as if the world itself paused to watch. The villagers froze, their cries cut short, their eyes darting between the girl and the alien, and something in their hearts shifted. The fear still remained, but it was tangled now. With wonder the forest glowed brighter, the pillar of light in the sky thinned, slowly dissolving into countless sparks that drifted downward like falling stars. The villagers stared as the sparks touched the earth, vanishing on contact, as though the heavens themselves had sent a blessing. None dared to speak, for the silence was sacred. When the light finally faded, only the alien glow remained steady and soft. The girl stood beside it, her figure small, yet unyielding. She knew nothing would ever be the same. The villagers had witnessed the impossible, and whether they chose to embrace it or to fear it, the truth could not be erased. History itself had shifted, and she was at its center.